Good afternoon. I'm Helen Rinsberg, president of the Cincinnati Asian Art Society, CAS to our friends. We're very happy to present today's talk by Ashdeen Lilaowala on Parsi Gara. We'll learn about his contemporary interpretations of centuries-old Oriental and Persian embroidery techniques, featuring stylized flora and fauna motifs, among other symbols that represent the Zoroastrian reverence to nature. Ashdeen is an award-winning textile designer, author, and curator, known for his research and revival work on the Parsi Gara through his eponymous label specializing in hand-embroidered saris inspired by the storied craft. Lilaowala studied textile design at the National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad, following which he conducted extensive research on Parsi embroidery for the Ministry of Textiles alongside UNESCO's Parzor Foundation that took him on a journey from China, Iran, and India. His seminal research on the traditional and vanishing craft of Zoroastrian kusti weaving has been published as a book, Threads of Continuity, the Zoroastrian Craft of Kusti Weaving. And now I'll turn over the screen to Ashdeen.
Thank you, Helen, for the lovely introduction. It's an honor to be presenting to the Cincinnati Asian Art Society. And I'd really like to thank Vinita Jindal for introducing me to you all, and Julie Desai. And big thank you to you, Helen, for organizing this talk. So this talk is titled Stitches in Time, and it talks about Parsi Gara embroidery, the evolution, the motifs, the colors, the different styles which make it typically Parsi. And in the end of the presentation, I will showcase some of the work we have been doing over the last 10 years in our own label. So let me start with this wonderful portrait of a Parsi family, which must have been taken in mid-20th century. The Parsis of India developed a distinct style in the late 19th century and early 20th century. This style of wearing typical Parsi saris, which were fully embroidered, and the gentlemen were dressed in suits. And here you can see a distinct photograph of a family where the women are dressed in fully embroidered saris, the men in blazers and suits. And what sets this photo apart is that the matriarch of the family is seated in the center. Here is another family portrait of the slightly older, this may be from the late 19th century. And you can see the family again in these wonderfully draped saris. This is a shot of the JJ School of Mumbai and earlier Bombay. And here you can see a group of girls in their geography class. And they have, obviously it is a special occasion. And these garas and saris which they are wearing were extremely expensive saris and were worn only on special occasions. Another portrait of Parsi ladies seated around a table. Here you can see a wonderful painting which highlights the drape of the sari, which is distinctly the Gujarati style, in which the women take the sari over the right shoulder and take the piece of the sari over their head. On the head, if you notice, she's wearing a white band. It's actually a scarf called the Mathubano, which was worn below to always cover the head. And you can see the jewelry with pearls and diamonds. This is a portrait of the Tata family. And here you can see them wearing their Gara saris with extremely European blouses with frills and bows, very influenced by the fashion of that time. These are some other portraits. Here is a painting by the famous Indian artist Raja Ravi Verma. So how did these saris come about? And how did this small community start wearing things which were so distinct and unique? And the whole journey starts in China, and it starts with one product, which is tea. Tea was an essential commodity in Europe, which was sold at a premium price. And in the British realized that they could fetch a lot of money from trade in tea. So tea from across China was collected and traded, and a triangular trade developed in which Indian cotton was sold in China, and the proceeds used to purchase tea, which was exported to Britain and sold there for gratifyingly high profits. As you can see here, had become a very important commodity in Europe, and you had these tea salons and you had tea parties, which were very important. Here you can see Parsi traders in Bombay seated on bales of cotton. Cotton was grown extensively across the west coast of India and was used as a commodity to trade with China. The second commodity, which was extensively traded, was opium. Opium was produced across India, especially in the east, in Calcutta, Bihar, and other eastern states. Here you can see a European rendering of an opium factory. And as you can see, pots of opium have been stacked one on top of the other. This is a rendering by an European artist, and if you see, the perspective is very, very European and church-like, and with big arches, big heights. And this is a more realistic drawing by an Indian litho artist. And here you can see it was dark, dingy, not very big factories. This is another drawing which shows that the opium was produced abundantly across India. These goods, the opium and cotton, were carried to China in what was known as opium clippers. These opium clippers had basically 4 masts, and they moved fast and they carried the cargo safely. So these clippers were used to carry all the cargo from India, and they were taken and exported in Canton on the Pearl River. So as you can see here, the Pearl Harbor, where Pearl River, where a lot of trade took place. And in the back, you can see lots of these small factories. And these factories had godowns on the ground floor, and on the first floor were the residences. And there were several countries which traded on the Pearl River. Here you can see a very busy scene on the river, and the other countries trading along with Britain and India were America, France, Portugal, Sweden, and Denmark. So you can see distinctly the different flags of the countries outside the houses. Apart from Canton, traders were not allowed to enter mainland China. So all the trade had to be done through Chinese merchants or hongs, were known as hongs. And these hongs were basically instrumental in producing textiles, producing ceramics from across China, and trading with the foreign countries on the Pearl River. China had a history of silk weaving, and they were known for producing the finest silks. Here you can see like a full cottage industry where silk was produced in most houses. Here the women are setting up a warp. Here you can see a fully set up warp and the weaving taking place. China had developed an extensively mechanized loom, and the weaving was fantastic. They produced different fabrics, semi-mechanized handloom in China, very fine silks. And these silks were embroidered extensively, and they were sent to Europe as screens, as garments, as also cushions, upholstery. And the legend has it that a Parsi trader who had already reached Canton and was trading, he saw these silks, beautiful silks being embroidered, and he asked one of the embroiderers to do it on 6 yards, which is the length of a sari, so that he could gift his wife. and that he carried back to India, and that's how the trade started. We don't know yet what was the exact date or exact time when this trade started, but through historical records, we know that in 1809, several enterprising Parsis were already settled in Canton. By 1835, there were 52 Parsi traders living in Canton, and the first Parsi lady to travel was Putlibai Davar in 1866. So we have some of these records, and like you can see, this full landscape showing the silk industry in China. Some of the biggest traders who traded, the Parsi traders, the first was a shipbuilder, Naurozji Jamshedji Wadia of the Wadia family. They were excellent shipbuilders, and they started building their own ships in the port of Surat. And as you can see in the painting, there is a ship in the background, his compass in front, to show that he was an excellent shipbuilder. And his family traded extensively in China and brought back not only ceramics and the tea, but also started getting fabrics which were fully embroidered and came to be known as the Gara saris. One of the another person who traded a lot was Sir Jamshedji Jijiboy, who was the first baronet, and he traveled 7 times himself to Canton, and he amassed a lot of wealth, and he used this wealth in Bombay to sponsor schools and lots of other charitable institutions. Here you can see another photo of the Tata family, and this is the founder of the Tata family, Jamshedji Nasirwanji Tata, and his wife Hirabai, his 2 sons Dorab and Ratan Tata, with their wives Merabai and Nawajbai Tata. The Tatas also traded with the Chinese and expanded their business and earned a lot of money, which they later used in India to grow their business and to do other businesses. So let's talk about these beautifully heavily embroidered saris. Here, as you can see, they're fully embroidered from inch to inch. So earlier saris, we have realized, since the embroidery craftsmen did not know what a sari was, or they hadn't a clue how it would be worn. Some of the pieces were embroidered from corner to corner, and they were fully worked with different patterns. Some of the popular patterns, or one of the most popular patterns, is this Chakla Chakli pattern, or the male sparrow and female sparrow. And it has a reference to if you see on the left, the Persian motif, which is the Gule Bulbul, or the contradicting birds. So here you can see these birds which move in different directions, a pair of birds which look in different directions, complementing, and you could see the textile fully covered, and yet your eye wouldn't get stuck. It would move seamlessly through the textile. As slowly these motifs got simplified and got done in a single color. As you can see on the left, it was done on purple, which was one of the most popular colors. On the right is a more scenic interpretation. We've got examples where the Chakla Chakli, there are 3 birds in one stem, and you see these which were slightly more cruder versions which happened later in India. This is another example of a Chakla Chakli design where the whole field of the sari is completely embroidered with the bird motif. Another very popular motif was the peacock. The peacock represents beauty and dignity. As you can see, it is seated, standing in the center. Here is another fine example of Chinese peacocks. If you notice, the Chinese peacocks always had their tails displayed and were in full dance. And if you notice, the Indian peacocks, which were embroidered, always had their tails at the bottom. They weren't always open. So these were some of the distinct features which slowly developed. Here is another border with peacocks. Another motif which was extensively seen on Parsi textiles is the cranes. The crane is denoted as the head of the bird tribe, and the officers in China used to have a crane badge which signaled that they were the senior most officers in the army. And in terms of hierarchy, the dragon was associated with the emperor, the empress was associated with the phoenix, and the crane was associated with the first officer. And you can see cranes were definitely drawn with a lot of love and embroidered with a lot of love, because the Chinese had this fascination for flight. And these were these big birds which could fly very elegantly, and yet they could they moved very elegantly. So they were drawn extensive, used across garas over the years. Here you can see some more examples of cranes in different forms. Another motif which was popular is the fish. The fish, the word for it is yu, and it means abundance. This is a very unique gara in which fish, different fish, turtles, alligators, crocodiles, eels, lobsters, prawns, everything has been embroidered. And this is one of the examples where definitely the craftspeople did not know how it would be draped, because when worn, this sari actually all the motifs are downwards and they don't actually move along the wearer. So this, it's a very beautiful wall hanging, but as a sari does not necessarily work very well. Here you can see fish again beautifully embroidered on a textile. So on the left is a pattern of which is a hand-drawn pattern, and on the tracing or the khaka which is first made, and then it was traced onto the textile and later embroidered. Another motif which we see a lot in Parsi Gara is the butterfly. The butterfly word for butterfly is te, which also denotes to 70 to 80 years. So a butterfly denotes long life and longevity. And also it is the Chinese Cupid. So very often seen on wedding dresses and on wedding textiles. Here you can see a very large abstract butterfly forming, covering the whole field of the sari. Another jabla pattern in which you can see this beautiful butterfly. Here are more simpler butterflies in a trellis design. The butterflies got extremely ornate also, as you can see on the upper border. And sometimes it was very difficult to demarcate if it were a butterfly or it was a bat. Another popular motif is the chrysanthemums. The chrysanthemums denote the 9th month of the year. And on the 9th day of the 9th month, the Chinese drink chrysanthemum tea. And this signifies the onset of autumn. And it's an age-old tradition. And the chrysanthemum chrysanthemum flowers are definitely associated with China and Japan, largely associated. Here you can see, and across the years, we've seen so many different renderings of a chrysanthemum. Somewhere it's very thick, it's very bulby, or sometimes it's very thin and ornate or very abstract. So a chrysanthemum you can see extensively throughout Parsi Gara saris. Here you can see a very different form of the chrysanthemum. Another bird which was seen in the textiles was the phoenix. Like I said earlier, the phoenix was associated to the empress, and the phoenix, the mythical creature, is said to have 5 human qualities. Its head represents virtue, its wings duty, its back denotes correct behavior, its breast symbolizes humanity, and its stomach reliability. So it is one of a very important motifs, and you don't see it very often in many textiles, but you do see some. And here you can see it on a child's jabla. This is another sari in which a beautiful phoenix has been rendered. Where here you can see on the left hand side in a Chinese textile, it's been colored and it's very detailed. And on the right, it's more simplified in a sari. This is again a drawing or a khaka of the phoenix, and then how it gets embroidered onto the sari. Here you see two phoenix. So we don't see a dragon in any, like it's very difficult to find a dragon. And after many years, we found this border which has a very abstract dragon. And the dragon was the sign of the emperor. So it was not often that you saw it on the textiles. And this is a rare border which I have found, and it's in my collection, but it's very rare to see. Another motif which we found after a lot of research was the bats. And very often people, the Parsis are not fond of bats at all and find bats very inauspicious. And many of them, when we were doing our research, did not even realize that they had bats on their saris. So I had to kind of show them that the border, it wasn't a butterfly, but it was a bat. And a bat, the Chinese bat is the same word as happiness or fu. So it is extremely lucky, but in our community, we fear them and we never have liked it. And once I told one of my aunts that there was a bat on her sari, she refused to wear that sari again. And she very happily gave this border to me. Here you can see another pair of bats on the border. These are a border which has the divine deer, which is also found, and this is bats again. Another motif which we, through our research, realized that we kept seeing these formations which were like stone or gravel, and it basically is the divine fungus. It's a mythical notion to represent longevity and immortality. And as you can see, these amoebic shapes which are formed and the birds are perched on it, it's the divine fungus. So I kept through the research seeing it on textiles, and I kept wondering what it was. And then on research, we realized it was the divine fungus, again telling people that your sari or your precious heirloom has fungus on it wasn't very pleasant. And people, it was difficult to convince them that it is a divine and it is a very important symbol. And one of the peacock is said to roost on the divine fungus, and the only animal who can find the divine fungus is the deer. So as you can see the picture on the left, it's the peacock perched on the divine fungus, and below is a monk or a sage with a deer who will help it to find the divine fungus. And here again you can see a sari with the peacock, divine fungus, and the deer. And here you can see clearly that in the deer has in its mouth the divine fungus, so representing immortality. Another symbol which we've seen in the saris are the Taoist symbols. In Chinese mythology, 8 symbolizes the immortals and the 8 Taoist saints. And so the Taoist symbols are the fan, the sword, the bottle god, the castanets, the flower basket, the bamboo cane, the flute, and the lotus. So as you can see, all these symbols were found in borders and textiles. Another rich, heavily embroidered border in which you can see these symbols. This is the endless knot, which is also found through Persia and China and seen in these saris. Now, some of the as the Parsis started trading and as the saris grew popular, some designs became much more popular than the other designs. And one of the designs which became extremely popular was the China Chini design, or the China man and Chinese woman design. So basically, it was a landscape showcasing Chinese architecture, showcasing Chinese flora and fauna, and obviously Chinese people in different activities. And here you can see an extremely beautiful sari, which has been rendered with figures. And it has the bird, it has like a peacock perched, it has a deer, and every small repeat is done in different colors. So the whole sari is from end to end and done in absolutely brilliant colors. Here you can see a corner of the sari with the border and see more detail. And like you can see very small details like the vase on every chair and the outfits worn by the Chinese figures. And these were extremely exotic as travel was very difficult. People did not have an idea what the Chinese life was. So to wear something like this was an extremely prestigious thing. And these were expensive even then and only afforded by the richer Parsi community. And here you can see a shawl which has the Chinese figures. And what is unique in this shawl is that the faces and some of the hands were made with real ivory. So real ivory was carved and put with details of the faces instead of embroidery. As here you can see the details of the architecture, and you can see the animals in it. There's a elephant, there is a dog of Fu, there's a tiger, and these were all rendered for the European and Indian market. And what is unique about this shawl is there is a dragon border in this also. This was another textile which I had documented in my travels in China. And this was from a family who traded extensively from Canton and sent textiles to India. And the mother of the family who used to give the designs requested the craftspeople that if they could do different activities and show different Chinese people in different activities. So here you can see somebody cycling, somebody exercising, women wearing their finery, somebody is boating, fishing. So lots of different activities showcased in one sari. And here again, the repeat is very, very large. And so you don't see the same figures again repeating throughout the sari. This is another example where they showcase bridges, pagodas. Bridges and pagodas were very exotic, and it was very interesting to see them in these textiles. This is another jabla or a top, and here you can see extremely detailed figures in different activities. You can see children playing with a dragon mask, a peacock, flags, the houses. On top, you can see more details of the figures, and in the bottom is a border which may have been done much later in India, and you can see how the work has got simplified and is not exactly what it used to be. This is a detail again, as you can see, of an army procession with lanterns and flags. You can see how beautifully they've shown the king or a prince traveling on the clouds. And this is on the bridges, the princess. And below you can see a scene of a carriage being drawn, a horse-drawn carriage. So another beautiful stitch which came out of these textiles was the small peaking. So this knot is like a French knot, but it has a very small tail at the end. So it's so fine that you can give very, very nice shapes and you can create beautiful movement with this stitch. So where the French knot can be a little bulky, this gives you the sharpness at the end. So this peaking stitch or the forbidden stitch, so the myth has it that people doing this used to go blind, and that's why it was called forbidden stitch. But also that we don't know this, and many of these myths have come later to also sell these textiles at a premium price. Another design which was extremely popular was the kanda papeta. This is a polka dot design, but kanda and papeta means onions and potatoes. So polka dots were so common that they were kind of like as common as onions and potatoes. So they were denoted. So you have like these row of cream dots and a row of slightly beige dots. So they were known as onion kanda papeta, and it's a extremely popular design, and you still see it in many saris. Here you can see more examples of kanda papeta design. This is another design called the Karolia or the spider design, and the Chinese call it the spin wheel design. It's like a children's spin wheel, but the Parsis call it the Karolia design or the spider design, and it kind of is like slightly it has some optical illusion, so it looks like these spiders are walking on the textile. Another very interesting textile was the ambi, or the what we call as the paisley. And here you can see in one sari there are two kinds of paisleys. So on the above row you can see what is like an Indian paisley, which is more like a mango and it has a rounder base. And on the bottom you can see what is called the Chinese paisley, or which is more square and urn like. And the Chinese paisley had always 5 petals at the bottom. The 5 petals signified the seat of the Buddha. And these saris were, which are fantastic because they show you the real amalgamation of different techniques which came to become the Parsi Gara sari. So you have the Chinese, you have the Persian influence, you have the Indian influence, and you have the European influence also. So here you can see the detail of the paisleys on the right, where the Chinese paisley is more square and has like the petals below, and the Indian paisley is more like an ambi or a mango. This is another paisley design which with peacocks in the center. Here a paisley design with baskets. Another paisley design with baskets. Also, you can see on the border is typically what an Indian rendering of a paisley would be. So this is a unique piece in which you see the peacock forming the paisley, peacock and bamboos forming the paisley. And on the right hand side, you can see the crane and birds forming the paisley itself. So the paisleys were extensively seen in Chinese designs and worn in Parsi Gara saris. Here you can see a jabla with the paisley and the spider or Karolia design. This is definitely got more influence from the Indian paisley and all over design. Another symbol which we see is the rooster. The rooster is meant to be very auspicious in Zoroastrianism, and Parsis believe that the rooster is the bird which heralds the new day. So we never kill a rooster, and the rooster is a symbol of protection. So very often you on children's textiles you see the rooster. The rooster is also one of the motifs which we do rangoli outside our houses, rangoli or like a design which is done, and you often see the rooster motif which is done outside the houses. So here you can see on top a border with 2 roosters, and below you can see a rooster, hen, and 3 little chicks. So you got a lot of these borders, which are called as marga margi borders, like meaning rooster and a hen border. Here you again have roosters on a jabla and on a textile. So when I said that Parsi textiles had a lot of European influence, we can see a lot of bows and baskets in the textiles, and these were distinctly European. And here you can see another Chinese baskets with a fan. This is more typically European with small bouquets of roses. This is a classic bows and basket design, another form of it with, and if you can see the colors as much more simplified, it's simplified here. This is with the butterfly and the baskets in the border. So the garas were done on this very beautiful fabric. On the left, you can see this very striped fabric, what we called as sali gaj. Sali means straight lines or like a straw of lines. So sali was basically, it was a lino weave. So the lino weave basically gave the strength to the silk, and yet the silk was fluid enough with kilos of embroidery being able to drape. So you could drape the sari very easily, and it still held the weight of the embroidery. So some of the saris even now are extremely means older saris are extremely heavy, and but they don't tear easily. This is another fabric which was like a damask or a jacquard, which was often used. And on the left, you can see it's a silk jacquard, and on the right, it's a satin damask design. And these designs or this fabric was called a khyal or a dream, like it because it had an impression of something, so it didn't show really, and the embroidery came over it. So it was like a dream. And over the years, when we have been documented, we saw a lot of textiles which had in the corners these small seals and small kind of writings, small kind of motifs. And slowly over the years, we've realized that these seals have been given by different companies which were exporting them. And here, as you can see on the left, it is written as Kanki Co., which is the Kanki company from Canton. And on the right, you have the lettering, which showcases the design name and the company which produces it. Here you have these extensive seals in the end of the saris. And on top, as you can read clearly in English, it says made in China, Chungtai. And in Gujarati, it says Chin Ni Banawat, which is basically made in China. And the fabric earlier you got was of a small width. So it was around 27, 28 inches. And very often women bought three saris. And they kind of joined one sari and another half of another sari. And then they joined one sari and another half. So basically out of three lengths, did you get two full saris. And the older saris had like a seam running through them. So it kind of showed clearly that these were definitely the older silk fabrics which were produced in China. And then you have a code for the dyeing and the colors which were used and to showcase on the textiles. So this, if you see, is a full sari which has been folded, and you can see on top, the border was done on top, and that top border, which is around roughly 2.5 meters, would frame your head, and the lower border would be at the bottom of the sari. And if you can notice on the corner, right hand corner, there was a gap, there's a triangle, which was, the embroidery was never done there. So basically that part was used to tuck at the back. So it kind of made sense not to do the embroidery, otherwise it would get too bulky to tuck, and also it kind of cut the cost. And on top, on the left hand side, if you see, that was the part where the sari was folded, and put in the petticoat. So it didn't make any sense to embroider there. So you see older pieces where the corner was always left empty. So a lot of my clients come now, and because the style of wearing has changed and women are draping saris in various styles now, so they don't, this looks like as if it's a big mistake or somebody has left it on purpose. So now we kind of complete these corners for them and match the embroidery. So here you can see another series of portraits where the women are wearing what is known as a core sari or a border sari. So these were like these small borders which were done with embroidery and could be stitched onto the sari. And if the sari got dirty, you just remove the border and stitched it onto another sari. So it was a great way of making, having different outfits, but using the same border. So a lot of women kept changing the borders, and even today, like my mother would have attached it on one fabric, and when my sister had to wear it, she removed it and put it on something else. So the sari looks totally different, but the embroidery remains forever. Here you can see two paintings where the women are wearing the typical Parsi style sari. And as I mentioned earlier, the white hairband like thing is a matha bano or a scarf. And one of the funny things which happened, because they covered their right ear, very often the women couldn't wear a earring. So they generally never got two earrings made. And if they got two earrings made, they made one into a pendant and one they wore as a earring. So when the set or the jewelry set had to be given to the children or to the daughters, very often most families have got only one earring, or now are left with only one earring, because somebody else got the other earring as a pendant or something like that. So the jewelry was never made also sometimes as two earrings. This is a portrait of my great aunt, and here you can see she's wearing a typical Parsi sari with a brooch and a very simple blouse, which was known as a jabla blouse. And Parsis often accessorize their saris with pearl earrings or pearl chains. This is another set of photographs where the women are wearing the core saris or the border saris. So some of the popular designs in cores was definitely flowers, and you could see roses, chrysanthemums, peonies, and you had different very European color schemes. And these very pastel color schemes were often known as the Swiss borders, and somehow they associated them with Switzerland, and so they were known as Swiss borders. And here you can see grapes also embroidered into the border. Here is again a rooster border done in the very fine forbidden stitch technique. Here is a Chini border, or the Chinese people. And here you can see a pair of puppies seated next to the woman. Another border with a horse carriage. This is floral with birds. So very often these borders became extremely popular in India, and slowly beyond the Parsi community, they were worn by the Bengali community in West. They were worn in Hyderabad by the Nizams and others. So what started was in Banaras, they started making woven borders with very oriental designs. These were to replicate the expensive embroidered borders, but they kind of stayed with the oriental theme and had bridges, pagodas, and different flora and fauna. These are some other borders. As you can see, they are all removed from the saris and they are separately. So very often in Parsi families, people will have some borders stashed in their cupboards, and it would be used on a special occasion or it would be given as a gift to the next generation. This is a very unique border with a very Chinese porcelain kind of color scheme of blues, different shades of blues on off-white. Here you can see a very rare border which has Chinese characters and the alphabets, and it is a very auspicious border. So these are some of the borders which we have collected, and we have many more, and constantly we are collecting these borders as inspiration. This is a photograph from the Central Bank of India, and as you can see, most of the women wearing the Parsi style sari with borders. So they wore these borders to work daily. Another garment which got popularized was the jabla, or like a small tunic worn by children. On the left is a painting, and where you can see the child wearing the jabla, and below she's wearing these pantaloons or pants called the ijar. And on the right is a photograph, and it was this is on the left is my grandfather, who was photographed in 1928 wearing his jabla, and on the right is my sisters and me. I'm in the center wearing my purple jabla. So very often we did these photographs where to wearing the jablas on special occasions or on different festivals. So here I'm going to showcase some of these different designs of jablas. Here you can see the peacock with the endless knot. Here you see the birds. So this is a unique jabla with carnations on it. This is my mom's jabla. This is a extremely heavy, fully ornate, embroidered jabla, slightly damaged. This is the one I am wearing in the photograph. So as you can see, this is another portrait of Parsi kids, maybe for an occasion, wearing jablas and ijars and topis. So this is what an ijar or the pantaloon was. And it was extremely big, and it gathered around the waist. It's like a what we call a Hindustani jama, and some of the other patterns which are more simpler. So it was so these ijars are very wide, and you have to pull it in on the waist. So you very often got fabric like this, which just had borders on both sides, and then you could stitch it to your own measurements. So as you can see, these fabrics had a self pattern and just borders at the edges. So this was kind of highlighting and showing you what Parsi Gara embroidery is all about, and the different motifs, fabrics, etc. And I'm going to show you a little bit of what we do in Delhi and what we've been doing with our label over the years. So we do hand embroidery. We use different techniques with the Ari needle and the small stitching needle. And here you can see a group of craftspeople on the frame, and they are kind of embroidering. So first we do a drawing, a very detailed drawing, and the drawing is pinned, very finely pinned to follow the same line. And then the paper is placed onto the sari or the textile, and you take a sponge, and you take a little white paste, which we make, and we kind of rub it through. So the perforation allows the white paste to go onto the textile. So as you can see on the textile, some of the white lines is the initial design which is on the textile, and then the craftsperson follows that design and creates the embroidery. After it is embroidered, it is kind of cut, it is stitched, finished, and then you get the final product, which we largely do saris, and now we have kind of started doing different other textiles and products. So this is one of our first designs. And I kind of wanted to, when I started my brand, I was quite sure I did not want to replicate or copy traditional designs. I wanted to kind of give them a new vocabulary or add something new. So this is taking my favorite motif of the cranes and making it into a contemporary sari where there is a lake scene at the bottom and there are cranes flying on top. This was from our first collection where we did butterflies, different designs, mixed different borders, made them of different sizes. This is one of our other popular saris, which is called as 200 flowers. There's some more than 200 different flowers which we've used in this sari. These were some other saris where we used like a lotus pond with dragonflies. We did a porcelain kind of look. So it was kind of in the initial seasons, trying different new things, different ideas, and seeing where it would go. And some ideas kind of worked, some ideas didn't. This is one of our most popular designs. It's inspired by a Japanese kimono in which we've taken cranes, which is, like I said, my favorite motif, and done it on the pallu or the main part of the sari. So it's very graphic, black and red with these birds on the pallu. As you can see, some more designs with cranes, flowers, different. So we kind of stayed away from the traditional look and created a newer vocabulary. This was a collection which was inspired by Chinese pottery and blue and white pottery. So we kind of created this skirt, and all the flowers had been ombred or different colors. And here you can see cherry blossoms, different chrysanthemums used in the saris. This was another sari which we created with cherry blossoms. Here we tried using introducing net, which is rarely used in Parsi textiles. So this was a much softer collection where we did white on white and different pastel collection shades. This is when we did slightly more traditional, but still making it us. So I was very inspired by these canton shawls, square shawls, and so the pallu of the sari is like a shawl. And then we kind of added the design throughout the sari. So these were on very bright gemstone colors. So an emerald, a ruby red. This is our version of the China Chini. And we have done a lot of figures and very detailed work in this sari. Then other inspirations, trying to change the placement, playing with different colors. This was one of our most popular collections where we kind of introduce slightly more bigger motifs, or like we did a grid, which became very popular. This was a collection which was inspired by Japan, and we took flowers which were typically more Japanese than Chinese, and so the sakura, kiku, various other flowers were used in this, and it was styled in a more Japanese fashion. This was another collection which we did, which was called Portrait of a Lady. So we also have branched out into doing Indian wedding wear. And like here, you can see a lehenga or a bridal skirt. So we've started adapting Parsi embroidery onto this. And we get a very good response now. And we have brides from various communities wanting to wear this for the Sangeet function or for the wedding function. This was our recent showcase in Lakme Fashion Week, which happened just before the pandemic. And we kind of showcase skirts, kimonos, different silhouettes. So here you can see a tunic, you can see pants, you can see a kimono. So different ideas put together for the show. This was we were invited to participate in the China Silk Museum, and they were doing a showcase on how the kipao or the traditional costume could be interpreted by different designers from across the world. And we were invited from India, and we decided that we would want it to have an element of a sari and then still have the traditional collar and the shape. So as you can see, it has an embroidered blouse, a shaded kind of bottom with pleats in it, and a sash or a sari kind of effect on the shoulder, which is fully embroidered with birds. This was a portrait of Oprah wearing a China Chini sari. It was for Elle magazine, and we were very, very happy that Oprah had worn one of her saris. This is a very famous Indian actress, Asha Parekh, wearing one of her designs. Another actress, Wahida Rahman, wearing a classic border design in emerald. And this was a shawl which was commissioned to give to Amitabh Bachchan, the Indian superstar. And it has his name written in various different languages and the Parsi Gara in design in between. So this is the different kind of work we've been doing across the last 10 years. And this is a glimpse into Parsi Gara, and there is a lot more to it. And I hope I've been able to give you kind of a preview into what this textile is, unique thread of Indian craft is. Thank you. Helen?
Yes, I'm getting my microphone going here. There we go. Trying to figure out how to do the windows. I'm not very good at doing the windows, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think I'm on, and thank you very much, Ashdeen. I'm just overwhelmed by the colors myself. I just think they're absolutely spectacular. And I know that I learned quite a lot, and I had some questions I was writing down, and then you answered them a little bit later in your presentation. So I haven't checked the chat, but I will in a minute. So it's time for our question and answer series, section, I should say. Okay, somebody put up in chat the link to our Asian Art Festival. Then Nagus said the divine fungus looks more like a scholar's stone.
Stone, yes. So there is a lot of debate about what the divine fungus is, and lots of people don't believe it as like the divine fungus, and also there are various names in different cultures. So we have come across it called as a scholar's stone also.
Okay. If you view our Asian Art Festival thing, where Cincinnati is a sister city with Liuzhou, China, and they're famous for their scholar's stone. So it's probably in people's memories on that. Yeah. Then thank you so much, Ashdeen. It was a delightful presentation and very educational. Please, can you leave us your contact information? Sure. Okay. Yeah, I can send it out too when I send out the YouTube, if I have that permission from you. Okay. Yeah. All right.
You can follow us on Instagram. Our handle is Ashdeen L. So that's the easy and fastest way. And our website is ashdeen.com. So right. It's quite easy.
I have to give people a warning about your website, though. You better have some money. There are so many things there. It's like, oh my gosh. It's really pretty astonishing. From Margaret, the older embroidery examples, were they made in China or India or both?
Both. So both. So earlier, there's a story and there's a legend that means it's a known thing that the Chinese also came to India. The Chinese traders, they used to come with like what we Parsis say, like a big bori. Bori basically means a sack. and they used to have like lots of saris borders put together, and they just tied it up with the fabric, and they used to carry it and go from house to house. And even my mom remembers these ferias, we used to call them ferias, who used to come home and they used to showcase their design, show you. They would bargain, they would kind of chat with you, they would kind of, sometimes also exchange something like an older piece or something, and give you a new piece. And so they kind of brought textiles, and they also in the afternoons kind of just sat, because it was too hot or something to go up and down. They sat with the families and they kind of taught them embroidery. So a lot of embroidery later happened in India, and there were smaller schools, or I would say smaller workshops or karkhanas where this embroidery was done. So there were also Parsi women who did this embroidery and kind of did it for families, and they traveled. This I'm talking in means mid 20th century, that they also traveled and they kind of got pieces commissioned in China and got it back to India. So women of the Tata family or the Vadia family would kind of approach somebody to kind of design this sari specifically. And
so you had door-to-door salesmen for these sometimes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And you had workshops in Calcutta, you had workshops in Surat, Gujarat, in South Gujarat, Surat, and obviously in Bombay.
Amazing. Just amazing. Anne Wicks just said some of them were fungus patterns and some others were rocks.
Yes.
I know there's a motif in China and Japan of rocks and orchids. Did you ever see orchids as any of the flowers?
No, we don't. Strangely, we don't have orchids. So that's what we kind of have realized, that it is not that everything was there in the Parsi textiles. So some of it just was not part of the vocabulary or repertoire. And so we've not seen orchids, we've not seen very marigolds, small marigolds, etc. in our saris. So
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Peg's back with, is all the embroidery in your designs done on silk for your label?
Yes. So we largely work with different kinds of silk. So we do on crepe silk, Georgette satin. We do on satin. We do on silk organza. Now a lot of things. So we largely work on silk, and we have done it on like Indian fabrics like Chanderi, Maheshwari, but those are rarer one-off pieces commissioned by somebody. So the idea is that we have to stretch the fabric onto a frame, and so you need a lot of tension to do good embroidery. Otherwise, if the fabric is loose, you won't get a good stitch. In the tension, you need the tension. So for that, you need fabric which can stretch and which can hold for a few weeks when it is stretched. So if you have a very delicate cotton fabric or whatever, chances are that it would split along the warp or along the weft. So
along the weft.
You have to be very careful.
Thank you. That was fascinating for me. I mean, I used to sew a lot and sometimes quilted, so I used a quilt frame. That's pretty cool. Okay. Oh, and then someone just said there were definitely some that were the long life fungus of Taoism. Yeah. Okay. Nita is, where in India are the artisans that embroidered the saris and the designs? I think you just covered that.
Yeah.
Right. Julie wants to know, do Parsis still wear gara for weddings?
Yes, very much so. And today, like a lot of other people from different communities are wearing garas. So in our own business, we have women from other communities. 80% of our customers are women from different communities, and 20%, I would say, is from the Parsi community. So people are wearing, and it kind of went out of fashion in the 50s and 60s to wear a Gara sari. So there was the Indian freedom movement. Then there was in China also, the trade had stopped or ended, and slowly the georgettes and new georgettes and crepes were coming in from France. So those had become popular, and slowly the garas were not in fashion. And we have heard or seen many horror stories where grandmothers or somebody in the family cut up their garas and made them into house coats. So some woman has come to me showing that her mother had made a dustbin out of her precious gara. And so people made kind of, and also the saris tore over years, and kind of they had they couldn't be repaired. So they kind of were rehashed, made into cushions, etc. And then in the 80s or the 90s was this slow transition of revival. And there was a lady in Bombay called Mrs. Naju Davar, and she kind of started reviving and making new Gara saris, but kind of keeping to the traditional pattern, color work, everything. And then slowly it kind of has picked up. And today there are a few labels in India who are working with Parsi embroidery as the main focus. So it's kind of in mainstream now, and it's kind of popular. So, and a lot of Indian girls today for their weddings want to pick up a piece of textile from various parts of India. So they want one sari from Gujarat, they want one sari from Rajasthan, or they want something which is typical to Bengal, and they want to have like a collection which encompasses most crafts of India. So that is kind of interesting, and somewhere the Gara fits in. So we are very happy and that they're coming up to us to buy.
It really is pretty amazing how many different fabric traditions they have to choose from in India. But yeah. I don't want to say the industry is so old. I think you answered the question about modern day saris and original fabric.
Yes.
Then Anne again. I love the combination of showing historical samples of embroidery followed by the elegant new creations. Thanks for the many new beautiful photographs. I have to agree, that's pretty astonishing. Then from Peg, your designs showcase the beauty of the natural world. They're magical and must make the wearer feel as beautiful as they are.
That's very sweet. I hope like whenever we create something and the wearer feels really proud that they're wearing something special. And more than anything, we are very happy when we hear somebody tell us that, I wore my mother's sari. And so in the same family, the mother, the daughter are sharing. And so that kind of also plays to today what sustainability is kind of all about, that it's not something that you wear it for one season and you can't wear it ever again. So you have a textile which you can pass it down. You can kind of, and the beauty of the sari is that it can fit everybody. And today people are doing it differently, pairing it with a different blouse. Younger girls are wearing it with jackets, or they're wearing it with belts, and styling it with boots or whatever. So that kind of makes it really special and fun.
Let's see. Okay, and my husband just put in, as a former photographer, I have to applaud the photographs of your collection. Both the garments and the images of them are spectacular.
Thank you.
Cool. I have a question that hasn't been asked, and that is, how did you get interested in?
So I studied textile design, and I kind of was always interested in, I've seen my mother, I've seen my aunts wear it at functions. And as a child also, I was kind of curious about it. And I thought I knew a lot about it. And then when I was studying, we have a course called craft documentation. And I kind of said, let me document Parsi saris. And I thought it would be kind of easy because I knew. And that's when you start digging, and slowly you see more patterns, you see more kind of colors which were common, you see. And I visited few people, and they would say, I have this most unique sari and nobody else has this design. And then I would travel to like Hyderabad and I'd see the same sari, and I was like, you don't. So, and to see parallel motifs, to see kind of things like something like the divine fungus or the peacock perch or many other things were slowly discovered as we were doing research. So I kind of had been doing research. I traveled to China. I interviewed families who lived in Canton and Shamin, and their mothers traded. And I went to Iran to see common influences and kind of see the roots, ROTS and ROUTES, of linkages. And then somewhere I was doing my own work. I had an embroidery studio, and a friend of mine asked me, why don't you make me a sari? And I said, okay, we'll give it a shot. And I made the sari. It turned out rather nice. And slowly then somewhere I made another sari for another friend. And then I kind of thought, why not do it as a label and kind of take it further? So that's when I started my label in 2012. And so we're kind of 9 years into this. And and from first I knew I didn't want to just copy old designs. So there had to be something new coming from me. And that's where we've been working on every season to kind of create new things and kind of change the image of the Parsi Gara.
Thank you. I mean, it's just fabulous because you're working with history, but then you're pushing it forward and trying new things.
And I
go ahead.
Sorry. The Gara, as you must have seen, it was always evolving, even when it was very popular. So the idea is to keep it evolving and to keep it moving, and not to have like one format for it or to have one stereotypical color or something. So that's the idea.
I have a little theory myself, because the more I was using technology for my job and for personal, the more I seemed to want handmade stuff. It was just like connecting physically with stuff that you can't connect on the internet. And I personally just have all these small percussion instruments and ceramics, plus a kimono collection, because you can pick it up, you can feel it, you can wear it. And the kimono is another one. Well, they used to fit everybody, but we tall Americans, the old ones don't do so well, because Japanese ladies were very short.
So even a sari has a limit. So if you're very tall, it doesn't fit. So even for the Indian girl now who are getting taller and taller, we kind of have to make it longer. So
okay.
Yeah.
You would think with 6 yards you would have enough there, but
6 yards is the length, but the width is 44 inches. So the width is what you tuck. So if you are a very tall girl, and people are wearing very high heels now, so it kind of adds to the sari. But also now more and more the draping has changed so much that your sari need not touch the floor. Your sari need not be exactly at your toes. It could be at your ankle. It could be shorter. Everything works.
There's something to that freedom and great, because it's keeping those traditions alive. I'll just make one last question because we're going way over, but everybody is hanging in there. I mean, I'm just astonished at how many people are still on. How many people does it take to do one really complicated sari?
So we have these bigger frames. So the frames are roughly 2 meters long. So you have 8 people sitting around them, and it would take roughly 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks for them to complete one full sari. So it
Wow.
takes nearly 1.5 2 months, and these are very experienced karigars, craftspeople who are working rather well. So if you were a novice or if you were trying, it would take way more time. And so what we employed nearly 170 craftspeople,
Wow.
and so we have different units, and what we do is we develop a certain design with one factory or one small unit, and that unit keeps manufacturing the same design. So every time they do it, it's not like starting from scratch. Their hand is kind of set, they know the movement, they know the flow. So if somebody does the cranes, we give him to do the cranes again, him, her, to do the cranes again. So they kind of keep doing the cranes. So they know how to do the beak perfectly, how to do the eye, how to do the shading, the feathers. So, and then it goes faster for them. So it's more profitable for them.
How long does it take to become proficient like that?
So it takes years of like work and to get, and also you have to have inherently some artistic sense. So to shade a flower or to, to do a bird, you need to understand a little bit of movement. You need to understand that to give a little shading, you'd have to start on a diagonal. You can't start horizontal. So different things like that. So roughly it takes around 6 months to a year for a person to learn. But we generally have, I always say India is like full of supremely talented craftspeople. So we have so many craftspeople in Bengal and in UP, in various parts of India, who know this from, and they learn it from childhood. They'll see their parents doing it. So they'll also sit there for 1 hour, kind of practicing, playing with it. Once they get it, they do a little more, they do a little more. And then they can, so if you've learned it from the beginning as something you're playing with, it comes very naturally to them. So they don't have to sit and relearn it or kind of put effort into it. They just picked it up as a child. It's like a video game. If you played it as a child, you know it.
And you do have to have a certain color sense, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, that we have to still control, because sometimes they can go wild with the colors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sometimes we leave it to them. For butterflies, we have a sari where we allow them to just freak out with any color they want to do, anything. So that they go all out, but most of the things we have to kind of give them the colors, the shading. And some of them obviously know it very well, but others kind of can need help.
No. So you probably had people that worked with you since 2012 and they're still with you.
Oh yeah. I've had people who've been with me now for like an earlier. Also, I used to run a embroidery studio, but do different kind of embroidery. So they've been there for last 15 years.
Whoa, that's amazing. Well, we have gone an hour and 20 minutes because you just have so much fantastic information. So at this point, we're going to stop the recording, but I have to give an ending here to everybody. And that is, thank you for everybody who participated. Questions were great. We all learned a lot. This recording will be posted to YouTube in a few days. And if all goes well, CAS will have an in-person program Sunday, November the 14th. It will be at the Taft Museum of Art in Luther Hall. And I don't know about everybody else, but I'm definitely looking forward to seeing some of our members and friends in person and enjoy our real reception because we'll have a little virtual reception right now. So please check the Cincinnati Asian Art Society webpage and your email for more information about this. Thanks for attending.